Hey folks, it's Deep Dive Sunday, and I'd like to talk about Bob Duff. Here we go. Bob Duff appoints area residents to state commission. Let's look at the article. It's important. Here we go. Michelle Jacob of Norwalk appointed to the task force to study ways to protect senior citizens from fraud. There is a gigantic check fraud problem in Norwalk. Detective Maloney is under written instruction by the mayor not to investigate it. And Koholic is using it who's chief of police, is using the check fraud at his own peril. But if you look here, press aide Kevin Coughlin, let's bring him up. Here he is on LinkedIn. Director of Communications at Connecticut Senate Democrats. The Connecticut Senate Democrats have their own machine printing articles to benefit Bob Duff. Here we go. Sabrina Church. Is that Mike Church's wife? Mike Church is on the Ethics Board of Norwalk, who is sitting on 13 very serious ethics complaints for 2 years. I don't know Lamont Daniels. I do know Steve Kleppin. He was on Norwalk's planning and zoning, and he came from New Canaan, where Grace Church built a restaurant and church in a residential community to raise money for Jim Himes and the DNC. It was purchased by Diallo, who is Lamont's right-hand hedge fund manager, billionaire, the largest hedge fund in the world, built Grace Farms, and Steve Kleppin was the New Canaan planning and zoning guy, who Bob Duff just put on the state board of planning and zoning. So when you look at these questions, for example, Colin Hosten is the Board of Ed Norwalk guy. This is the book Lawn Boy from the Norwalk Public Library that deals with sex, normalizing sex of fourth graders giving each other blowjobs. And I highlighted 3 pages in my last video, but I want to turn to another section here, marked by this card, to read you another section. This is a book in Norwalk in the LGBT minor section. All I could think about while he was chatting up over the rim of his cappuccino was his little salamander between my 4th grade fingers, rapidly engorging with blood. Was he expecting me to do it again just like that? Whoever Doug Goebel is, who had fellatio in 4th grade with this guy, that's in the Norwalk Library. Now, I called Bridgeport to see if they had it, and they said no, but Bristol has it, and I'll put it on the shuttle. So it's statewide. They're shuttling these books in the LGBTQ section to normalize pedophilia, and look what's happening with the transgender book reading at the Norwalk Library, supported by Bob Duff and Harry Rilling and Colin Hosten, which is child abuse. Let's continue to talk, because this item on the screen is just the tip of the iceberg. If you read these other articles about Duff, written by Kevin Coughlin, let's talk about it. $2 million was raised by Duff to clean up Ryan Park. Not a single ounce of dirt from this park that measured 642 parts per million ended up in Massachusetts or Pennsylvania, as Bob Duff staff reported. We went to the meetings. The dirt was removed 175,000 yards and trucked out of Norwalk. Where did it go? Well, they're saying it went to Illinois, but none of the receipts went to Pennsylvania or Massachusetts. Now dirt is discovered in Fairfield at 23 parks that are contaminated with PCBs. And this, as I recall, Ryan Park had a garden, community garden, with PCBs. Next to Washington Village, the soil was pushed up against Washington Village. 18 buildings were taken down while the residents were in them. Lucy died. Mary was on a respirator. Multiple Spanish ladies got sick. And one of the priest girls developed cancer. They had VOCs in their apartments. They had mold. They had rats. They had bed bugs. They had roaches. They had a year-long gas leak while Bob Duff was throwing their complaints into the garbage. If you watch what Bob Duff does, yes, he raised money, $2 million to clean up that park, but none of the dirt from that park went where he said it did. So it wasn't properly disposed of, and it had 642 parts per million PCBs. What I'm saying about Norwalk is Veteran Park is a CAP Superfund site. Oyster Shell Park is a CAP Superfund site. The Hat Factory, all on Meadow Street and Woodward. 32 Meadow, 34 Meadow, 40 Meadow, contaminated lots. Manresa is a 125-acre coal ash dump, which is radioactive material next to the oyster beds. All the dredging done in 600 municipalities around Norwalk is brought to Norwalk and dumped off Norwalk's harbor. You can look at Chuck Schumer's comments about Himes, Blumenthal, Murphy, and Duff, how they are poisoning New York with Connecticut's contaminated soil. But, back on track, the police department is a CAP Superfund site. Zion Church is affected. The French Baptist Church is affected. Neon is on a contaminated lot. That's a new public park built on, funded by Duff and his contamination of the POCD, which was Steve Kleppin's disaster. Now Duff brought Steve Kleppin to ruin the state after he ruined New Canaan and Norwalk. So there's a lawsuit filed. It's been filed 6 times. It has 285 plaintiffs from Norwalk who live around stone crushing, who are subject to heavy metals, silica, which causes iron lung, and chronic nosebleeds develop. One Sheridan, the woman has brain cancer, and 2 of her daughters have asthma. Her son has lymph node cancer. All along Quintard, where Firetree is. Let's talk about Firetree. Firetree is a prison release, represented by Robinson and Cole, continuously making contributions to Bob Duff's Senate campaign and Harry Rilling's mayoral races. Robinson and Cole lied to Judge Crumrich, lied to Judge Jacobs. Heller, Provader, lied to Judge Gennario continuously. Duff built a prison in Quintard with prison release in a local community, closed the maximum security prison, closed the Norwalk Criminal Court. There's less criminals in jail right now. They're releasing all the criminals, A. And the state's attorneys involved, lowering the serious offenses, nollying criminal records, and having them stipulate to lesser crimes to release people. So, the maximum security prison was closed by Bob Duff. A private prison opened, and those attorneys bribed Bob Duff and put Chief Koholic on the board of Firetree, which has this check fraud problem, which connects to all these other articles I brought up. Here we go. Duff announces major state investment in Norwalk housing. Okay, there's article after article. Here's Kevin Coughlin on LinkedIn writing the articles that Bob Duff, right here, Kevin Coughlin, go back to my file, go back to my inbox, all this legislative detail goes back to Bob Duff. Look, social media, state district, impact of everything he did, okay? Go back to the list. Look at the headings. State grant to clean up South Norwalk, appointing people to the state commission, the detail. Here we go. 5G connectivity will move major impact on Connecticut economy. This is the infrastructure plan of Biden coming to Connecticut. Now, if you look, Blumenthal is saying there is no health effect of 5G. They're using a 24-year-old study to say that. Now, look at other articles. They're everywhere, okay? There's an FAA one I want you to look at. Here we go. The FAA is concerned about 5G and radar affecting altimeters causing plane crashes. Okay, this is something that Bob Duff should have looked into a long time ago. Hello. They're putting up 5G across Connecticut. It's killing the birds. He blames bird seed. Okay? Bob Duff blamed the police for spitting on the ground. They said Duff accused him of spitting at him. Last week, Duff accused a guy running for the BOE in Darien who was sitting in a chair with his finger like that. He accused him of being a white supremacist because of this symbol. Excuse me. This means okay. Van Buren was president of the United States. He had an estate in Kinderhook, New York, which is about an hour away. It's up in Columbia County. The President of the United States, when finished writing his bills and doing his work, would say to his secretary, "I'm off to Kinderhook. Everything's okay. Off to Kinderhook. Okay." That's not a symbol of white supremacism. Senate Majority Leader Duff is accusing every Trump supporter of being a racist. Really? Open borders is Bob Duff's policy, bringing the undocumented here and giving them checks, giving them your hard-earned Social Security check. Now, the Congress loaned $97 trillion from Social Security so far to pay these bills of the federal government. Social Security is bankrupt, okay? Medicare is bankrupt. Yes, it is. Because of the policies of the DNC. Now we have a DNC reporter writing lies about Bob Duff, Firetree, campaign contributions for putting prisons in residential communities, while Kaholic on the board of Firetree is approving check fraud of Harry Rilling, who instructed Detective Maloney not to investigate check fraud in Norwalk. Well, there's articles here of Duff, which you need to read. He's saying he's going to protect the elderly. Win state grant, appoints area residents. Press release. Let me see what that says. Page 3. Oh, I mean, everything Bob Duff touches, the education funding system. You should follow that. Here's a big one. The Walk Bridge in Norwalk, Connecticut. $1.3 billion. Mishandled by Duff. There are buried, carcinogen, packed containers in the Norwalk River when Veterans Park, a capped Superfund site, had its landing dock dredged. They determined that the soil was so toxic that they had to put it back in the river. Okay? The problems with Bob Duff don't end, and the oysters are contaminated. How do we know that? The Milford Aquifer Company has reported that. Is there any signage that you shouldn't be fishing in the Norwalk Harbor? No, because those people, mostly Spanish men, are dying from eating those fish, and it's a problem for Bob Duff. Look at everything he touches. Look at Washington Village. Lucy died, okay? Asbestos removal with a 500-pound woman living in Washington Village, the last person removed during the construction project. What happened? The HUD says the most vulnerable need to be moved out of the housing project first. That didn't occur. Bob Duff allowed contractors to pump VOCs right into the Norwalk Harbor in the sewer main. Bob Duff allowed a year-long gas leak to put at risk all the people in his legislation that he maintains he's trying to protect. Let's go to the articles. They're all here. It's one after the next. Like I said, the state commission, he's putting, a gay man in charge of your kids' benefit. And what's the story with that? Bob Duff is stealing your parental rights. Here comes a vaccination, forced vaccination. Do you know there was a study for 18 to 25-year-old boys where 870 boys were tested and 213 got myocarditis? So therefore, the vaccine is not high risk to 18-year-olds in high school, okay? They won't die from it normally. It's 0.001. However, if 213 or 20% of the 875 people tested after the vaccine got myocarditis, they have a 10-year life expectancy now. So sending your kids to school under Bob Duff might be the worst thing you could possibly do, because the risk of myocarditis is far greater to a healthy child than getting COVID-19. So I don't care if you wear a mask. Wear a mask. I wear a mask all the time to protect my father, okay? The point is, I come into contact with people and I go and cook him dinner. What's the point of all this happening? Well, it demonstrates clearly, first of all, that the closing of prisons and the closing of the Norwalk Criminal Court led to more criminals being on the street, which translates into higher crime rates, putting you at risk of known criminals. One of those criminals from the maximum security prison that Bob Duff closed attacked or tried to kill a woman from Stamford who was sexually assaulted by that criminal released. How did he get out? Well, he was in the maximum security prison, transferred to a mental facility, not equipped to handle violent felons. He escaped, ran straight back to Stamford, and tried to kill a person he had already raped. Now, what's the function of how did this occur? The prosecutors nollied criminal acts and reduced the charges on felonies to misdemeanors to get the convicts out of jail. Here we go. Now, what's Firetree doing in a residential community, and why are there crack pipes in the street being discovered? Why is the chief of police of Norwalk on the board of Firetree, and why is he approving check fraud in Norwalk? Again, there's another article related to financial crimes of the elderly in Norwalk. One of these articles. Legislative bill. Hold on. You have to watch this. A scam. Concerned about 5G. Yeah. Afghan refugees coming to Connecticut. Tracking 5G to Bob Duff. Arab Emirates. An act accelerating the deployment of 5G wireless facilities. Joe Arasimowitz, Bob Duff, Martin Luty, Matt Ritter. God help us all. I'm telling you right now, putting pedophiles in charge of your children is one thing. Forcing a vaccine on healthy kids that is more likely to give you a heart condition than the risk of the infectious disease itself that was possibly man-made and funded by Obama, and Fauci's involved up to here with what's happening. And the narrative that we're hearing is, I can't even post about what the narrative is. I was a vaccine guy, folks, at Greenwich Global. We're still trying to get the criminal prosecution of 500,000 felonies through the Stanford Superior Court, which we have not been able to do. Why? Because of Judge Kremrich, Judge Gennario, Judge Provater, Judge Heller, Judge Jacobs, and 25 other judges. What's the story? They stayed arbitration. They stayed Connecticut actions pending NASDAQ arbitration with Bernie Madoff, who was chairman of NASDAQ. Now, Bank of America is stopping those lawsuits because Judge Adams is a partner at Kelly Dry & Warren, who took over the brokerage firm and gave control to the Norwalk Police Department. What does Norwalk Police have to do with money laundering of computer shares, Bank of America, Fleet Securities, Quicken Riley, Fiserv Securities, and NFS, Fidelity? The thing is an absolute gigantic nightmare. And you guys need to follow the story. You need to find out, while you're listening to the false narrative of Mr. Coughlin about what Bob Duff has promised. Case in point, Washington Village, 30 people were poisoned, including Lucy died, Mary died, Helen getting shifted around. She was a victim of Washington Village, of Bob Duff. Helen is Travis Sims's aunt. Travis Sims ran for state rep of the 140 against me. When Travis Sims's aunt fell in the shower, she didn't call her own nephew. She called me. I helped her out. I got her out of the shower. Guess what, folks? We've got the wrong criminals in office in Connecticut. As witnessed, Helen, Travis Sims's own aunt, said he's only out for Travis. Yes, Travis's daughter is a BLM member who assaulted a blind woman on Election Day a year and a month ago. What's happening in Connecticut? It's destruction. The Sikh won't enforce ADA law when it comes to a state rep's daughter assaulting a blind woman on Election Day that was a Trump supporter. My last point I want to make is, Bob Duff said every Trump supporter is a racist. Meanwhile, he backs Travis Sims, whose family assaults, look at the multiple assaults of Travis Sims. His brother, Tarvis Sims, multiple assaults. His daughter, multiple assaults. So here we go. Bob Duff claims, for example, each Republican is a white supremacist. Really? My mother was a Republican. Old hat. Not like the old Democrat. What I'm trying to demonstrate, which is very complicated, folks, is that our Senate Majority Leader is taking bribes from the prisons to close them and open them in residential communities without permits. Without permits. So, how does he have 41 pages of bribes? Every law firm, Halloran and Sage, writes checks to Bob Duff. Robinson and Cole. What are the other law firms writing checks to Bob Duff to get 5G permits, to get the Walk Bridge financing, to get the... These are private partnerships that are fascist to move the Democratic agenda forward in Connecticut, which is the most blue state and is the most troubled state. Comey ran the FBI in Connecticut. Comey is blaming Jim Himes for the Russia collusion hoax. Clapper and Brennan blame Comey. Blumenthal blames Comey for the Russia collusion hoax. Comey blames Himes. All these guys blame Himes for the Russian collusion hoax. Himes got the grant for Washington Village. Lucy died at Washington Village. What is happening here, folks? The HUD has rules. When you do a construction deal, you need to move the high-risk people out first. She was moved out last. She was living there with VOCs, PCBs, rat, human fecal matter, and they pumped the fecal matter into the Norwalk Harbor where the oyster beds lie. Why is Veterans Park contaminated? Why is Oyster Shell Park contaminated? Because of the dumping. Why is King Industries dumping in the Norwalk River? That is on Bob Duff, okay? Why do 600 municipalities dump their dredging material off Norwalk's oyster beds? Why? They are ruining the environment, folks. They are ruining people's lives, and they don't care as long as they get their 5G agenda. And 5G has health effects such that the FAA is concerned about the altimeters on planes being affected by 5G. 5G, let me tell you something. In Poland and Russia, the limit of 5G wireless nanowatts is 9. 10 fries your testicle, 12 fries your DNA. And the limit in Connecticut is not 12, it's 600. If you live in a building with 5G and every single person has a router in their house, you could be subject to 35 microwatts of 5G. That goes through cement walls. It's like getting an X-ray continuously. It's going to lead to skin cancer, retinal detachment, blindness. It leads to immune deficiency problems. It leads to cancer. Why don't you sit in your microwave with Bob Duff and turn it on for 3 minutes? That's what you're going to do with 5G. 5G has health effects, and Blumenthal knows it. He just had a cigarette moment, he claimed, against Instagram and Facebook. But you know what? They go after conservatives on Facebook all day long. Okay? But not terrorist organizations. You understand? Terrorists can have a Facebook page. The Houthis, Al-Qaeda, ISIS-K, they can recruit for national threats through Facebook unharmed. However, people can't post about vaccines in Connecticut. They'll be removed from Facebook. You can't talk about certain topics. I have a number of strikes against me. I can't mention why I got those strikes, but for example, there are products sold on the internet that if you mention what it is, blood products that lead to bruising, that you will be kicked off Facebook. Now, Bob Duff has been able to lie through the DNC, like this joker printing articles that don't mention the 30 people poisoned at Washington Village, or the nightmare of bed bugs of people being attacked at night in Cedar Court, needing 2 transfusions while they're sitting in their wheelchair. We have real problems that Duff will not address, has no intention of helping these elderly. None. They all call Elizabeth Greenwood and Lizette Timke, who call other people to try to get help from. Bob Duff doesn't return calls, never returns emails. I send him emails all the time for years, no response. Is completely aware of the check fraud problem in Norwalk and claims to be helping people with financial crimes of the elderly. Oh, these are scams on the elderly. There's an article here about it. Well, hold on a second. When 3G and 4G get taken down, all those life alerts of the elderly will no longer work. They rely on 3G and 4G, not 5G. So 5G is being implemented, and it's going to cause birth defects, let alone on top of a vaccine that is compromising kidney function, liver function, internal bleeding problems. The list of complications of 5G is longer than the list of complications from COVID-19. Very good. I'm at 31 minutes. I hope you watch this and I can educate you as to what's happening and what our Senate Majority Leader is. Is he the Antichrist? I believe so. Thanks.